Recording in progress.
Going okay, Dallas. How are you? Can you hear me okay? All right. Yeah, I know. That's strange. Let's see. Um, what should I do? Integrated webcam? Should I do that? Oh, it's only one camera. Should I go under video settings? Okay. Yeah, that's so crazy. I've been having issues. Hey,
Um,
Dallas. Could she have one of those laptops that has a little slider up at the top by the camera lens that blacks it out?
yeah,
That,
she was right. Yeah, she was right. That's what it was.
that's
Yeah.
what it sounded like. Welcome aboard, Chiquita.
Yeah. Should I blur my background? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Marsha.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I would now like to call the September 24th, 2024 regular session council meeting to order. If you're at home or at work, you can watch this meeting on the city's YouTube channel or also on longmontpublicmedia.org/watch or on Comcast channels 8 and 880. May we have the roll call, please, Dawn?
Absolutely. Mayor Peck.
Here.
Councilmember Christ. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring. Here. Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember McCoy. Councilmember Rodriguez. Councilmember Yarbrough.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a reminder to the public, in accordance with Council's rules of procedure, the rules for providing public comment are as follows. Only Longmont residents and employees of the City of Longmont may speak during first call, public invited to be heard. You must provide your address on the sign-up sheet before the meeting or I will not call your name. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Anyone may speak on second reading or public hearing item, and you are asked to add your name to the speaker list for that specific item before the meeting. And anyone may speak during final call, public invited to be heard. We have 2 council members that are remote, Councilmember Martin and Councilmember Yarbrough. Can I have a motion to move the September 10th, 2024 minutes?
Mayor, I'm sorry. Those minutes, I emailed you all. Those did not, we had technical issues. I'll have to bring those back to you at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. We are now at agenda revisions, submissions of documents, and motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas. I don't see any agenda revisions except for the minutes and no submissions of documents. So do we have any agenda items that we want to add to future minutes? I cannot see Councilor Yarbrough.
I don't see anybody with their hand up.
No. I don't
Okay.
either.
Thank you. So we're going to move on then to city manager's report.
Mayor, council, I do actually I don't have a report today, but one of the things that we do, or that the employee advisory group does on a biannual basis, I believe, or annual basis, is they do an employee satisfaction survey. And so last Thursday, they had the ability to provide me with that information. So I've asked Sarah Del Valle to be here and present that information. We also have August here behind me, who is the chair of the employee advisory group. I thought it would be really good information for to bring forward to the city council, especially when we're in budget and we've been talking about some of the issues and we're talking about what we look at from a core services perspective. It gives us a good sense of where the organization's setting and what is challenging for the organization. One of the things that, and we're going to do this Thursday for my directors, we're obviously going to go into more granular detail, and then we'll present it. But one of the things that I wanted to point out is, as leadership in the organization, we do not touch this survey. This is done by the employee advisory group. They present us aggregate information, but we're pretty intentional about not being part of that because we do want input from the members of our organization, and we want candor. The only way we can improve is to have candor and have the ability to know that we're not seeing it. So I will turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. So thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you this evening. Like Harold said, I am Sarah Delvay. I'm a budget analyst at the city, but I'm also one of the vice chairs of the Employee Advisory Group. And August, our chair, is here tonight as well. Thank you. The Employee Advisory Group is a group of employees that are elected by their peers to work with city leadership on important employee issues. And like Harold said, we do have this annual survey to understand the satisfaction of employees on those issues. So tonight's presentation is going to be a summary of those survey results. So first we'll talk about the response rate we got. We had 533 responses this year, which was a 48% increase from last year. That's pretty significant. 533 responses, just for a little bit of context, is about a third of the total employees at the city, including part-time non-benefited employees. We also track the response rates by job class, so we know that we had a very large increase in responses for our labor and trades job class, and we also track that by department, and so we know that public safety and utility and public works in particular had very large increases in their response rate. And some of that is attributable, I believe, to some of the outreach that we did and also some additional traction that EAG as a group was able to get this past year. Part of what the survey asks respondents is their familiarity with EAG and whether or not they know their EAG representative. EAG has a representative structure where there are representatives for specific job classes, such as professional, technical, administrative, labor and trades. And then we also have representatives per department, and that breakdown by department is by the number of employees, partially by the number of employees in that department. So larger departments have more representatives. So a little bit about these charts. You'll see very similar charts throughout the presentation. Each bar is 100% of the responses. And in this case, each of these graphs, the blue is yes and the red is no. So respondents were asked if they were familiar with EAG, and over 80% of them said that they are familiar with EAG, and that's consistent over the last few years. And a bit more than 50% of the respondents know their EAG representative, and that has been increasing over the past few years. The survey also asked about individuals' overall satisfaction working for the city, and as you can see, it is increasing over time. With this graph, again, each bar is 100%, and the blue shades are satisfied responses, so from extremely satisfied, satisfied, and somewhat satisfied. And then the warmer colors, so those reds and oranges, those are the dissatisfied responses. And you can see that section of dissatisfied responses is decreasing over time, and overall satisfaction increased by about 2% since last year. We can also review this information by department, so that will let us better target our efforts and help those EAG representatives for those departments understand how their department is measuring up. So we can see that there is variation across all of the departments, but overall satisfaction levels are very high. The next part of the survey asked employees to rank the top employee issues. So which of these issues, they were asked which of these issues impact their satisfaction working for the city the most. And they were asked to rank these 10 from 1 to 10. No surprise, the top 3 rankings are compensation, work-life balance and work-life flexibility, and relationship with their supervisor and work team. And I say no surprise because we are regularly having conversations with our constituents in EAG and receiving concerns from them, and so we know that these are top of their mind. I do want to note that these rankings are almost exactly the same on average from last year. So each of those rankings matches where that average rank was last year, except for rankings number 4 and 5. Ranking 4 is advancement opportunities and training. And ranking number 5 is the leave policy and practices. Last year, those were flip-flopped, but the rankings are very close for those. So a portion of that decrease for the leave policy and practices could have been attributable to some of the changes in our leave policy, which could have decreased the amount of pressure that employees were feeling on that issue. Sorry about the text getting a little jumbled here. So then we were able to take each of those issues and we asked in the survey for employees to rate their satisfaction level for each of those issues. And one additional issue, which was support and training for supervisors and managers. So here, each of these bars, again, is 100%, with the blue bars being the satisfied responses and the orange and red being dissatisfied. And so now we can see each of these issues and how they compare with each other and how satisfied employees are. Each of these categories increased in overall satisfaction since last year. And the most significant increase was in leave policy, which had an 18.3% increase in satisfaction, which is by far the largest increase we saw. After that, the next largest increase was compensation, then camaraderie, support training and training for supervisors, and work-life balance all had increases as well. So this slide takes that information and it compares it with the 2023 data for that same metric. So the survey is structured so that each year we can compare the data to the previous year and start to see trends. And so for each of these employee issues, the top bar is the 2024 responses and the bottom bar is the 2023 responses. And we can see through this that some issues had more significant changes than others. So if we see on the second row to the far right, that is the leave policy and practices, and you can see there that that increase in satisfaction was mostly in the very satisfied category. We can also see that the one right above it, workplace flexibility, had very little change, although it was a slight increase in satisfaction rates. Because the survey does ask respondents for their department, we can also break down this information by department. And again, this helps EAG work with leadership to make sure that we're meeting employee needs and addressing some of the concerns or sometimes misinformation that might be out there. So for compensation, we can see that many of these are very similar across the board for departments, but there is still some variation. The second ranked issue, we split up into 2 questions for asking about employee satisfaction. So respondents were asked separately how satisfied they were with work-life balance and workplace flexibility. And again, we can break this down by department. And here we can see that some of the variation is in whether someone is very satisfied, or very dissatisfied or somewhat dissatisfied. And we separated out workplace flexibility because the responses here are different for that question. The next ranked issue we asked about, and sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. As I'm going through each of these slides about the individual issues, these are in order of the ranking. So we're going from most important, that was why the first slide was compensation, and now we're going down that list of the average ranking of importance to employees. I also want to say that we know all of these issues are important to our employees, but when forced to rank them, this is how they did rank them. So this next issue is relationship with supervisor and or work team. And again, we can see that there is some consistency across all departments. So all departments had at least a 70% satisfaction rate, but there is some difference in satisfaction levels. And I believe utility and public works here has the highest level of satisfaction. The next ranked issue was advancement opportunities and training. And this is one of the issues that EAG actually has a separate subcommittee for. There is a career planning and training subcommittee that works on training opportunities and making sure there's access to advancement for employees. So this is an issue that we have targeted efforts for. The next issue was leave policy and practices, and you can see that this does have a very high level of satisfaction across the board. I believe the lowest level of satisfaction here was 80%, and that is in the other departments category. And this did have one of the largest increases in overall satisfaction, and we believe that is due to the changes in leave policy from last year, and those changes included a change to the vacation accruals where employees could apply to have their prior experience be included in the calculation for how much vacation they can accrue per year. And then additionally, a parental leave policy was added, so the city now offers 6 weeks of paid parental leave. The next issue was non-leave benefits. This includes mostly the comments we received on this were for healthcare and retirement benefits like the pension plan. So again, we see pretty high levels of satisfaction here with almost all departments having at least an 80% satisfaction level. The next issue was mental and physical wellness. Again, we see some variation here, but the satisfaction level here is lower than in some other category or some other employee issues. This category includes anything from the city's wellness program and incentives to things like mental health and burnout and overall satisfaction. The next ranked issue we asked respondents to rate their satisfaction on was camaraderie, collaboration, and culture. And the city actually has kind of a renewed effort on this. There is a camaraderie subcommittee within EAG as well, and Harold has been doing cultural attributes presentations to the organization to try to strengthen that cultural the cultural attributes, but also the sense of culture and camaraderie across the organization. The next ranked issue was equity and internally. So what we mean by that is equity between departments, whether or not employees feel like the organization is equitable between work groups and across different job classes, departments, things like that. And these are pretty consistent across departments, with all departments having at least a 70% satisfaction level. Then we asked respondents about how satisfied they were about the equity efforts of the city externally. So how we are working to improve equity in the community that we serve. And again, there's some variation here, but all departments had at least an 80% satisfaction rate for this. And the last issue that we asked respondents to rate their satisfaction was not one of the ranked ones. This is support and training for supervisors. And although this wasn't ranked, we do regularly receive feedback about making sure that our supervisors have the resources they need to succeed. And so we included a satisfaction question on this. And you can see that this does, across all of the issues that we rate, asked employees to rate, this does have some of the lower satisfaction levels, but still at least 60% of employees in each of these departments rated either somewhat satisfied or satisfied. So that is the summary of the employee satisfaction survey. If you have any questions, please let me know, but thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Do we have any questions? How about online? Okay. Seeing no one, I do want to say that this is pretty good survey, pretty good percentages, and it shows that our staff, our Harold staff, is doing a good job under his direction.
Our staff, and I think one of the reasons I wanted to show this is, you know, we talk about how we work together and teamwork between council and staff and how we approach this. Many of the things that had the largest increase was actually related to items that council acted on as we were bringing those forward to you all over the last year when we talked about our leave policies and our vacation policies and those issues. And so I thought it was important that you all see this because at the end of the day, how we work collectively is incredibly important. But it also means a lot to the employees of the organization, and I wanted you all to see that because it was your decision making on some of these issues that came back. I will say there's work that we need to do. Specifically, you saw the issue on supervisory training. The mental health and the well-being piece is something that I think when we presented this last year, we saw those again. And if you get a little more granular, what you're seeing is workload capacity, ability to take time off. Those are the drivers in that. And so those are things that are front and center for us as we're moving into next year and how we're going to look at this, because we're still in that phase of not having all the positions filled, having the increased workload, having fewer people to deal with it. And so those are things we have to keep an eye on. 70% of our budget, and if you take capital out, Sarah's in the budget department too. So even in the areas where you take capital expenditures out, around 70%. Is that a fair number, Sarah?
I believe so, but I can't promise.
Yeah, so I'd say 60 to 70%. In the general fund, 70% of our expenditures are people. Other funds, it's a little bit lower and you have to manage, but the bulk of our expenses are really the people of the organization doing the work. And so for us, we've got to keep an eye on this. I joked with them, these results are abnormally high when you look at organizations generally, which means we need to pay even more attention to some of these results, because it won't take a lot to shift that. And so this annual survey is going to be a really good guiding light for all of us as we look at what's coming at us in the future. But I wanted you to see it because your decisions and your guidance and approving things was a big part of this.
Thank you. But I remember during the discussions as well, because a lot of them happened right after COVID, how employees were jumping around looking for the best paying job. It was an employee's market. And so a lot of this was about retention. We wanted to retain the employees that we had and make it palatable for them to work here. So thank you for all your efforts. It's great. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, and the other thing I wanted to add, the Employee Advisor Group is actually the creation of council. So years ago, the council created an ordinance that established the Employee Advisory Group. So it's there and they work with us. The one thing that we've changed a little bit is they work on their own. And so it used to be where I would set the agenda, I would have the conversations. They set the agenda, they prompt the conversations, they're bringing to us what they're hearing from their constituents. And so there is a connection to council as well.
Great. Glad to hear it. Thanks. Okay, we are now at our public invited to be heard portion of the agenda. And remember that we need your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. The first one on the list is Strider.
Thank you. Don't forget to turn on the mic.
Strider, don't forget the mic. Someone's going to help you out here. Hang on.
Push the stick in, Reed.
It was very good.
Thank you.
All right, Strider Benston, 951 17th. Couple of things. One, I saw on your list of 9 categories, the one that had no negatives was Nextlight. I'm sure that's fine for everybody that gets it, but if you live in a trailer park, they steal our internet, and it'd be nice if we had some way to deal with that someday, because we pay 80 times more per unit of service than everybody else in Longmont. And my trailer park's been trying to steal my home and throw me in the street. And just yesterday, I got city inspectors that said my place is fine. So I'm still working on that cannot survive. And everything has gotten crazy in the last 10 months. But anyway, one thing back, our former president has spoken numerous times in the last month saying, I don't need any votes, I don't need your votes, implying that he's going to take the election in power by other means. Everybody in the world ought to be aware of that. I've spent my whole life fighting for democracy, and I believe in it. And the Project 2025, one of the things they say in there is they're going to abolish civil service, which means everybody's job who does any kind of government thing like firemen or military or, and just appoint political hacks. And that's what we're facing. And they changed the rules in states like Georgia. They tried to in Nebraska, but there was one Republican who believes in America who voted against it. So it's out of hand to change the rules right before the election, but that's what some of them are doing. Anyway, Hitler only had a 12-year democracy to abolish, and a weak one, and we've had 235 years. Let's try to hang on to it and make it better. I was on the bridge in Selma in 1965, so I put my whole life into it. And let me just quote Thomas Jefferson. At one point, I don't remember what year, I wasn't there, but he said, I grieve for my country when I reflect that God is just.
Thank you,
Thank
Strider.
you. He was talking about slavery
Yep.
when he said that.
Okay. Steve Altschuler.
Steve Altschuler, 1555 Taylor Drive. I've watched all of Trump's rallies, as many as I can. I have never once heard him say, don't vote, I'm going to win anyway. What he says is, vote, have your friends vote, vote early, and let's make it too big to rig. He has never said, don't vote. And in the case of states that are changing their voting rolls, just today in the paper, Michigan took 860,000 people off of their voter rolls. They were all dead. 860 people don't die in 1 year. These are like people that have been on their voter rolls for decades. So cleaning up the voter rolls is a good thing. It's not something that's leading to corruption. And the only dictatorship that I've seen is Joe Biden, that keeps trying to get everyone to forgive everyone's student college debt. And there is no forgiveness. It just means that everyone else has to pay for it instead of the person that took out the loan and got the college education. So what I wanted to, and there's so much misinformation, to put it mildly. I think it's flat out lying. Let's see, I have a minute and a half. I'll start up at the federal level. I have not seen anything honest come out of our federal government. Just the other day, or today I think, Polis was saying that Aurora is a wonderful, safe place to go to. He goes shopping there all the time. I'm willing to bet that when he goes shopping, he has armed guards with him, since he is a governor. And if Aurora is safe, which I don't think it is, I think it's a very high crime city, you also have to realize that Aurora is one of only 3 cities in Colorado that voted to be a non-sanctuary city. So if Polis is going to go around saying that Aurora is safe, he's got to understand that being a non-sanctuary city has a hand in that. And that brings me to local. I would really like Longmont City Council to vote to be a non-sanctuary city. The only people that a sanctuary city helps are criminals. And just to clarify, I understand that people are illegal when they cross the border, but we're not talking about that crime. We're talking about someone like the Venezuelans in Aurora that are running around with guns, that are robbing and stealing and beating up people and killing police, and they're arrested. Being a sanctuary city allows the city to turn them right out back into the community again and not turn them over to ICE. So my point is, City Council, if you honor your obligation when you were sworn in to protect the citizens of Longmont, you need to be a sanctuary city and protect the citizens of Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Seeing no one on the list, I'll close first call public invited to be heard, and we will move on to the consent agenda. Don, would you mind reading the items into the consent agenda?
Absolutely, Mayor. The second reading and public hearing for the ordinances introduced on the consent agenda tonight will be held on October 8th, 2024. Item 9A is ordinance 2024-68, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of a 20-foot wide mutual access easement and a sanitary sewer easement generally located southwest of the intersection of Highway 66 and Alpine Street. 9B is ordinance 2024-69, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of a 25-foot wide drainage easement generally located south of Great Western Drive and west of Clara Court in the Sugar Mill Paired Homes development. 9C is resolution R 2024-66, a resolution of the Longmont City Council endorsing the ballot measure to authorize RTD to continue to collect, retain, and spend all revenues it receives from whatever sources without regard to the limitations of Tabor on the November 5th, 2024 statewide election ballot. And 9D is to approve 3 capital improvement program amendments.
Thank you, Don. That was pretty short this week. So I see that Councilor Christ wants to pull an item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to pull item 9C.
Thank you. Do you want to make a motion to move this agenda? Minus.
I move the consent agenda minus item 9C.
It's been moved by Councilor Christ, seconded by Councilor McCoy, to move the consent agenda minus item 9C. We are now on ordinances oh, I'm going too fast. So let's vote.
And Mayor Shakita's going to vote. She's not able to access the electronic voting system, so she will register her vote verbally.
Great. Okay. Thanks for letting us know.
Are you voting? Yay.
We are. Okay. So that passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we are on ordinance on second reading and public items on any matter. The first one is 2024-60. It's a bill for an ordinance amending Title 15 of the Longmont Municipal Code on land use regulations and planning approval processes to further incentivize affordable housing unit generation. Do councilors have any comments or questions on this resolution or bill? Seeing none, I will open up public hearing. Oh, Sean, Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I sent an email earlier and wanted to get some clarification on that. We started to have a quick talk and about that earlier. Can you give us a little bit of an understanding of why we couldn't expand the fee in lieu percentage so that the public can understand if...
Sure. So Mayor, members of council, thank you for having us tonight. Molly O'Donnell, Housing Director. The question that Councilmember McCoy is referring to is how our inclusionary housing requirement plays a role. So we require that 12% of all market rate developments provide affordable housing in one way or another. Providing it on site, selecting one of the various options to get up to that 12%, or selecting to pay the fee in lieu. And the fee in lieu, I pulled up our methodology to make sure I can reference this for you. It does follow the 12% requirement, but it does take, because we're talking about dollar values, it takes the dollar value per square foot of the market rate development that would be equivalent to 12% of that market rate development. And so in December 2023, the revised methodology for fee in lieu came out, I should say, was adopted by council. And that goes into effect for all developments on January 1st, 2025. So we have not yet had it fully in effect. There have been some, because we did a graduated implementation, some projects have been subject to it, and some got their applications deemed complete in time to go into that staggered schedule. Is there any further questions?
Councillor Christ.
Molly, how often do we review this policy?
We set out to review it every 3 years when we did the major implementation in 2018. We then did our housing needs assessment because some money related to COVID grant funds became available. So we tied up our housing needs assessment and our look at our inclusionary policy all together in 2021. And then we used all that information in 2023 to come to where we are. So we are scheduled to look at our fee in lieu update, or fee in lieu methodology, and update the numbers again in the end of 2026.
Also, when you're looking at the value of the market rate of the development, is that before the units are actually sold or created?
That
'Cause
is
I know sometimes it takes 2 years for a development from tip to tail.
right. The fee in lieu doesn't need to be paid until the end of the process. So there might be some thresholds of when it applies for a certain development, because having a surprise bill at the end of the project is also not good. So we have an option in there to calculate it earlier or later. But generally, the amount takes into certain factors that include the market at the time, what is deemed an affordable, in the case of for sale, what we have set as the affordable sales prices for that year, which are based on market data, interest rates, homeowners insurance rates, and a couple of other factors. So we do update those sales price maximums each year. And that goes into this calculation.
So they're paying the affordable price for the number of units, or they're paying full market price, or 12% of the full market price?
For construction,
Yeah.
you mean? They are paying the price that it costs to construct. So that is based on their construction contracts, price of materials, and that type of thing. But they must sell it at a rate that meets our affordable requirements.
Okay, unless they do the fee in lieu.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm asking.
Or another option.
Okay,
Pardon
so
me.
I'm asking about the fee in lieu calculation. It's 12% of the full market value. Is that correct?
It's 12%. So it's a per square foot calculation based on total finished square footage of the total number of units, market rate units in the development.
Okay. It sounds like a bit of a tricky formula.
It took a lot of development and research, and we had compared our methodology across those in the Front Range, and we did stakeholder outreach as well before we got to that point of adoption, yes.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned that we're having more people interested in building on site.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those was like the Modern West development, which was a nice little project just in the wrong spot. What do you see coming in the pipeline? Are you seeing?
We see more, since the fee in lieu rate got raised in December 2023, we do see more interested in building on site. They're still in that process where they're analyzing what is going to be best for their development and analyzing market conditions, but we see more interest than we had prior to the increase.
Okay. So we haven't seen an increase in people building on site, though.
It takes a little bit of time to get to that point, yes, but we'll be tracking that over the next couple of years.
Okay. How many years of land do you think we have left for building?
I think I would have to defer to another expertise in this room.
Burchett?
Mayor Peck, Councilmember Christ, while we have a limited amount of land that is currently not developed, we do continue to see redevelopment. So I don't know that we're ever going to truly run out of land. As the price of property and housing continues to go up, we see interest in areas where some of the properties that are older and folks see value in the property itself. And we see that quite a bit right now where people are buying properties to redevelop them. So could I tell you a raw land supply takedown? I don't have that number offhand. We could probably get that number by looking at some of our developments over the years and give you kind of an estimate. But right now, there's still a significant supply of vacant properties within the city, even though they may have constraints such as floodplain or other kinds of limitations based on locations to utilities, but not insurmountable by any means of people to be able to overcome those and develop them.
Okay. I do have one other question, and that is, what is the ramifications of House Bill 1313? Is that going to require us to make sure that we have more built on site?
I would say it wouldn't require us to make sure that we have more built on site. Generally, tracking our unit generation is something we're doing on multiple fronts regarding state legislation and funding opportunities. So that is something we're tracking closely and making sure any fee in lieu revenues received are helping amplify that. But it wouldn't specifically require more built on site.
Okay, but we do have to defend our opportunity that we present there and defend our percentage that the way I read it, we come up with a plan, which we do have, a 12% plan. But I read that we also have to defend, how we're implementing it.
Yes, and we do have to do that on a number of fronts, including the Prop 123 front, where we have to implement certain policies or commitments to building affordable housing in order to qualify for grant funding. On the 1313 side, it's similar. You have to demonstrate commitments to be able to access some opportunities. So we are tracking that to see how it all plays together.
Okay, and when is the deadline for that? Or is it's ongoing, I know, but
For 1313, I'd have to double check. I don't have that number off the top of my head, or the date.
yeah, I think we had to have a plan this month, but I don't know when it's, I don't know when we have to prove our numbers.
So the status that we know of right now, and we can dig in and answer further questions later if needed, but they're still developing the transit area maps right now and getting feedback on those maps. So we're kind of still in the planning phase.
Yeah, I think that's what was required now. Okay. All right.
But
Thank
it
you.
doesn't specifically tie to our inclusionary housing, not a direct impact. All
Correct.
related in our showing that we are making commitments, but.
Okay. Thank you.
So do you have a presentation for us now? No, you're just here for questions? Okay. So with that, I'll open it up to the public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this bill? And I see Dave Emerson coming down from Habitat for Humanity.
There you go. Good evening, Mayor Peck and members of council. My name is David Emerson. I reside at 1152 Twin Peaks Circle and here in Longmont, and I'm the executive director for Habitat for Humanity. So just wanted to come and voice our support for this proposal and ask specifically for one change. When it comes to affordability, simplifying concepts, reducing privately held common area, and reducing the time it takes to gain approval, of course, saves money and reduces risk. The change that I'm asking for is in regard to pocket parks. So it's my opinion that privately held common areas such as pocket parks should be reserved to larger subdivisions who have more financial, administrative, and governance capacity to manage them efficiently. Therefore, we support the change from 25 to 50 before one is required. However, we believe this should be the case for all house types, not just multifamily. and would ask that you adjust the ordinance to reflect that. So the current ordinance as written would give different requirements for single-family units compared to multifamily. Multifamily, in essence, is dwelling consisting of 5 or more individual dwelling units. It's apartments, stacked housing, condominiums, and then single-family attached is just party wall. That's oversimplification. But the reason I cite those definitions is when you think about the product that is being built out there, typically multifamily is rental. In other parts of the country, when you see condominiums, that's for sale product, but we know that we have a construction defect issue, so you don't see a lot of for sale product that is multifamily. Really, if we're looking at incenting affordable housing, it seems to us that we might want to consider a change that level sets and doesn't unintentionally provide a benefit to one type of product. Again, that's unintentional or intentionally. In our experience is that currently there are sites that are between 25 and 50 that are infills that we think it would be more appropriate to not have a pocket park and be building homes, 2 or 3 more, so that some deserving family could, that's currently priced out of the market, could have an opportunity with home ownership. And then the last comment I'd make is to ask that any changes that go through are for applications that are in process. That may be something to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Dave. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address this bill? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. The reason I'm hesitating is that I listened to what Mr. Emerson has said, and we are not at the part in this public hearing where the council is in a discussion part. So I think that some of the comments he made are worth discussing, are worth looking at. So Eugene, can you advise how do we do this?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. If somebody wants to make a motion,
Okay.
then you can have free discussion.
I'm going to make a motion that we table this bill right now so that council can discuss it. We can either table it for a discussion now, or we can table it for a future agenda. Right now, I think I would like to table it for the discussion now so that we can move back to it and have a discussion in public about this. Is that what you were referring to, Eugene? Now or at a future agenda or?
Mayor, I think the parliamentary rules are flexible.
Yeah.
If you want to have a discussion, I think you can have a discussion. I think council has had discussions before motions are made, especially where a comment comes up in the public hearing.
Yeah, I was just following the process, and we've never done that before, but I do think that valid comments were made that we should discuss. Does council feel that way or not? Councilor Rodriguez, I see you frowning, so tell me what you're thinking.
That's like all the time.
Yeah. Kind of.
I just want clarification on tabling it now. I don't know.
Well, and that was my mistake in my motion, and I can actually take the motion off the table. We can just decide to discuss it now rather than vote on it, because the process was that we have comments before we open up for the public hearing. That portion of the process has passed.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I think to open the conversation, I will make a motion to amend the ordinance to include all housing types as far as moving the pocket park requirement from 25 to 50 units.
Perfect. I mean, that's what I was trying to get a discussion on to see how we felt about it. Is there a second?
Councilmember Martin.
Oh, okay.
She seconded it.
All right, I did hear you, Marcia. It's to amend a bill. No, that's not it. Here we go. To amend a bill for an ordinance amending the Title 15 of the Longmont Municipal Code on land use regulations and planning approval processes to further increase affordable housing unit generation to include all housing types for moving pocket park requirement from 25 to 50. Okay. So Councilor Rodriguez made the motion. Councilor Martin seconded that. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Aye.
Thank you, Shakita. And that passes unanimously. Now we do need a motion to pass this ordinance as amended.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Rodriguez to pass Bill 2024-60 as amended. Let's vote.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. I do see that Councilor
No, it's me.
Rodriguez.
No. Thank you, Mayor Peck. I just
not used to calling it.
wanted to address one thing that Mr. Emerson talked about was the way the ordinance would apply to the applications that are under current review. I believe that we're not allowed per law to apply them retroactively to the applications currently in the process.
Mayor and Council, Eugene Main City Attorney, that would be correct, that the rules apply that were in effect at the time of your application, and this ordinance would take effect upon the normal course of business per the charter, 10 days, and be applied
To all
prospectively
subsequent, prospectively to all subsequent applications. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear as well. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We're now at a bill 2024-64. It's a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2024. There is no staff presentation. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none. I will open up the public hearing on 2024-64. Is there anyone in the public that would like to address this issue? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing on this bill 2024-64 and ask for a motion.
I move the ordinance 2024-64.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. Let's vote.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. The next one is a bill for an ordinance 2024-65, conditionally approving the vacation of one access and utility easement and one general utility easement located within the boundaries of Westview Acres subdivision, generally located at 8791 North 87th Street, west of Airport Road and south of Glen Air Drive. We do have a staff presentation on this with Kristen Coate.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor Peck and council members. I do have a short presentation. I am Kristen Cody, a senior planner with Planning and Development Services. We are looking at the Westview Acres vacation of easements. The Westview Acres property is located at 8757 North 87th Street, west of Airport Road and south of Glen Eyre Drive. It is zoned residential single family. So this summarizes the request. The request is to vacate one access and utility easement and one general utility easement located on the property under review for the Westview Acres subdivision. This property approved for annexation into the city of Longmont with an RSF, which is residential single family zoning, in December of 2022, no longer required these easements due to the redevelopment of the property. Vacating these easements will facilitate the cleanup and redevelopment of the property into 24 lots in preparation for a new subdivision. Appropriate easements to serve the newly created subdivision will be established with the plat of Westview Acres. This shows you a depiction of the easements to be vacated. We have the 20-foot general utility easement running east-west on the property, and the access and utility easement is centered on the existing 2 lots. The council options, the following options are presented for the council's consideration when reviewing the ordinance for the vacation of easements. You can approve the ordinance finding the vacations in compliance with the Longmont Municipal Code and review criteria. Approve the ordinance with additional conditions that would make the vacations in compliance with the Longmont Municipal Code and review criteria, or deny the ordinance finding the vacation not in compliance with the Longmont Municipal Code and review criteria. Staff recommends that City Council conditionally approve the ordinance subject to the approval and recordation of the Westview Acres final plat. And you have an ordinance that has been prepared to reflect that recommendation. And that is all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen. So no questions from council. I will now open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would like to address this bill? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion on this ordinance.
So I'll move ordinance 2024-65.
You have the 3 options are what we really need to vote.
I'll move it with the first option.
Which is, do you want to read it?
And that was
Oh.
pulling up my paperwork. So I'll move to accept the approve the ordinance finding the vacations in compliance with the Longmont Municipal Code and review criteria.
Kristen?
Yes, I would recommend including the condition that these vacations be conditioned on the approval and recordation of the Westview Acres final plat.
Did you get that, Dawn?
So, okay, thank you.
Can I have a motion? I mean, a second? Who seconded it?
I'll second it.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring, seconded by Councilor Rodriguez, to pass and adopt a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of one access and utility easement and one general utility easement located, I'm going to move this, within the boundaries of Westview Acres subdivision, generally located at 8791 North 87th Street, west of Airport Road and south of Glen Eyre Drive, option 1, and include condition that vacations be conditioned on approval and recordation of Westview Acres plat. Whew. Let's vote.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you. And the other one is 2024-66. It's a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the concept plan amendment to the Westview Acres concept plan, generally located west of Airport Road and south of Pike Road. We have the staff presentation again by Kristen Cody.
Good evening again, and thank you very much. I will now be presenting to you the concept plan amendment for the Westview Acres property. As introduced, the item before you is a request to amend the existing concept plan for the Westview Acres property. This property is zoned residential single family and is located at 8757 North 87th Street, west of Airport Road and south of Glen Drive. Originally platted in Boulder County in 1980, the property was annexed into the city of Longmont in 2022, at which time the concept plan and zoning were approved. According to the Envision Longmont Comprehensive Plan, the property is designated as single-family neighborhood. The proposed development includes single-family detached dwelling units. The original concept plan allowed for 22 single-family units with the 2 existing homes on the site to remain and was approved in 2022 with conditions. However, the applicant now proposes to remove these 2 existing single-family dwellings, which prompted this concept plan amendment request. It is important to note that this property lies outside of the airport influence zone. On August 21st, 2024, the Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing to consider an amendment to the Westview Acres concept plan. The applicant is requesting an increase in the number of single-family detached units from 22 to 24. The commission recommended approval subject to 3 conditions. 1, installing landscape buffers and privacy fencing on the north, west, and south sides before construction, submitting a drainage report per city standards, and adding design elements to encourage pedestrian and bicycle access along the emergency access road. This slide shows the concept plan approved in 2022. In the center, you will see the 2 large lots designated for the existing homes with a smaller lot in between the 2 and the remaining 19 lots distributed throughout the development. This slide depicts the proposed concept plan under consideration this evening. Unlike the approved plan, it removes the 2 existing dwellings on site. The applicant now proposes 6 lots along the north boundary compared to the 7 in the original plan and a total unit count of 24 single-family detached homes. The proposed amendment aligns with Envision Longmont and meets the requirements of the residential single-family zoning district. It complies with minimum lot size and width standards, and the amended concept plan adheres to all applicable codes and regulations. Adequate services will be provided for this development. The surrounding area contains compatible zoning and land uses. Based on the staff report and preceding analysis, my recommendation is that council consider approval of the Westview Acres concept plan amendment with the following conditions, as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which include a robust landscape buffer and privacy fencing must be installed along the north, west, and south sides of the property. The fencing must be installed prior to construction. A drainage report must be submitted in accordance with the City of Longmont design standards and construction specifications, and the applicant will provide specific marking, signage, and other design elements to encourage pedestrian and bicycle access and use on or alongside the emergency access road. That concludes my presentation. City staff is available to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is also present and has a presentation for you this evening. Thank you so much.
Is the applicant here? Oh, there you are. That's too big.
I know it's kind of making me dizzy tonight. It keeps zooming around.
Hello, I'm Jack Bestall, Bestall Collaborative, representing the Westview Acres project in partnership. 601 3rd Street, Suite 100 in Longmont. I have a presentation which is a little longer than I anticipated, and I may move through it quickly. but I thought there'd be some background. This has been a project in the making for 4 years, and that's not at the city's slowness. It's been our efforts to try to dial this thing in, and then of course get the appropriate review. So I think everybody knows where the project is. We're asking for, as Kristen's already pointed out, the 2 additional lots. The Planning Commission did approve this on August 21st. And the landscape buffer and the privacy fence, and as well as the drainage standards, those were all conditions actually of the annexation concept plan. So when they went to the Planning Commission for annexation, they put those conditions on, then it came to the council who approved those at that time. The planning framework that we used for the last 4 years was really heavily communication with the neighbors. We realized this was a larger lot subdivision at Somerset Meadows. We realized we could increase densities, within the 1 to 8 units per acre. So we really wanted to work closely with them and come up with something that fit. We conformed to the Envision Longmont plan. I think that's been touched on. We also selected about 2.5, 3 years ago to go with in lieu affordable housing option. And the reason for that really was if we were not going to be able to increase density to get the proper compatibility and the land use fit of lots, and based on that with the land costs and the feasibility, we thought in lieu was the best way to go on this particular parcel. I do want to underline that we have approximately 700 units, affordable and attainable units, currently in review at the City of Longmont. 2 of those projects are in annexation and 2 are at the very end of their site plan approvals. And those are all on-site construction. So we really favor on-site. We just don't think it really works for this particular parcel. And we can talk about that if you'd like. So this is the concept plan amendment. It shows the 6 lots to the north and the 3 lots to the west. These 3 lots align with the neighbors' lots, so there's a one-on-one relationship there. These 6 lots to the north are adjacent to 80-foot wide open space utility corridor. You can see the water quality pond here, and then the smaller lots, which are 6,000 to 6,500 square feet, are along Airport Road and in the center block. I went to the wrong button there. Excuse me while we speed up here. Going back in time a little bit, the referral concept, when we brought it to the council, actually had 24 units. So I'm not trying to impress you with how confused we were here, but we thought it was a good plan with the 24 units. In the first meeting of the council, there was discussions about economics, was it sustainable, and there was no action taken. We went away for 5 months and did some modeling and found out where that break-even point was on making sure the city didn't have additional costs. So we came back for a second meeting, which was modeled, and we confirmed the sustainability. So the concept plan that was approved in terms of the referral, it wasn't approved, but it was the referral plan, let's call it that, was actually 24 units. The annexation concept plan that we then made for a formal application, we reduced to 22 units because we knew it was sustainable. Both those plans had the existing homes as a part of the plan. We thought we could rehabilitate them and work with them on that basis. Then, after the annexation was approved, we did the preliminary plat preparation, studied it more carefully, and we really had second thoughts about the quality and conditions of the houses, reassessed that, and we decided to go with the 24 lot plan and remove the houses. So that's kind of what we've been doing in our spare time. This is the 2020 plan, which shows 24 lots. And you can see here we actually had 9 units on the north side, 3 on the west. And then here's the existing homes. You can see them there on the diagram. Here's the 2022 plan. This we reduced to 7. This was the annexation concept plan that was approved by the Planning Commission and Council. The homes are still there in that plan. And then when we removed the two houses, you can see here, we were able to add one lot here and one lot here that were really homogeneous with the existing adjacent lots. And we were able to reduce the number of lots on top down to 6. So this is the resulting plan after that effort. There's 3 approval criteria, which I know you're familiar with in terms of concept plan amendments. Will the parcel still be able to be integrated with its surroundings? The quick answer is yes. It doesn't limit integration. Will you be able to create undevelopable lots, or will they be burdened with this? I think this is a more efficient plan, less cost, less limitations. What about development phasing? Is it rational? Yes, this would be a continuous build. There will only be one phase for the construction of the project. There's an additional 5 criteria which are applied to all projects, and these are those that you've seen before. These were applied to the preliminary plat and to the concept plan amendment when we took these to the Planning Commission on August 21st. But it does conform to the comprehensive plan. It also complies with the Envision Longmont policies. Utilities are available, and we've designed up to this point specifically to be compliant with standards. It's compatible with surrounding properties. And you can see in the plan again that we're proposing that you approve this evening. It is compatible and consistent based on how it's really evolved over the last few years. The landscape buffer, which was required at the concept plan amendment at the concept plan annexation, we've really taken that to heart. We have buffers around the north, west, and south parcels. They're really based on buffer B in the code, and they do have a privacy fence, which was something the neighbors wanted and was required by the Planning Commission condition and was approved by the council at the annexation. This is a quick look at one of the construction drawings for landscape and irrigation. These have been done as a part of the preliminary plat and are ready to go, really. There's no adverse, well, I can never say no adverse, but there's very limited adverse impacts to surrounding properties. It's the same zone. There's no vehicle intrusion into adjacent neighborhoods, negligible natural resource impact. The utilities were there before. We've checked with public safety. They reviewed the plan, as has the school district, and there's capacity for this project. This shows how this was really set up. There's a sewer line that comes all the way to here, which we would tie into. The water line in Glen Eyre, we will tie across and go up Airport Road and create a loop. This is the drainage that's currently there on the north side, and that ties to this site plan, which is also a part of the preliminary plat submittal that's been under review. This is an extract of the drainage report, which is under review as submittal 4 is currently in. And this, of course, shows the water quality pond detention basin right here, which will go into the drainage. We've met the standards for that. Finally, multimodal transportation. There'll be 4 through lanes on Airport Road. There'll be a signalized intersection. There's also been discussion about a roundabout if, in fact, the property on the east side of Airport Road is annexed and developed. So there's very limited trips coming out of this project. And here's the multimodal plan, which shows the sidewalk loop on the interior block as well as the outside of that, and then how it goes out the main entrance, which is the southeast corner here. This is the emergency secondary access, gated, and that's what the last condition from the Planning Commission was to make sure that people know they can use this as a sidewalk, and we will build this sidewalk up to Glen Eyre. So this is the plat that was approved, the preliminary plat by the Planning Commission, which is in sync with this concept plan amendment. And this is the concept plan amendment we're asking you to approve this evening. Appreciate your patience. I'm happy to answer questions.
I have one question. When you showed us, by the way, thank you very much, both of you, for this. We've been here before with this, so I like the fact that you're continuing to improve it. But when I looked at your 2022 version concept plan, you had 2 exits on Airport. Where you have your emergency exit now, was another egress onto Airport Road. Why did that change? This is a pretty big development to only have one exit. And I know that the conversation before was that there was an exit into the neighborhood, so that you're not doing that any longer, it looks like. This one. Yes.
Right.
So why can't
This
the
is-
emergency exit be another egress rather than an emergency?
The transportation is not allowing that. They do not want a secondary, a regularly used access. They don't want more than one on Airport Road because of the size of the street that it is. And this is a sketch that I did actually in process, where there was discussion about a right in, right out. And that was after looking at the traffic study, which doesn't have a ton of trips, but after looking at that, and the fire department wanting, of course, a secondary emergency access, it was decided the best resolution was to have a secondary access which was gated and for emergency purposes only at that point. And that way it wouldn't be, causing an issue on Airport Road in terms of two access points in that close proximity to each other.
What if there is an issue in this development that people need to get out of it fast?
Yeah.
That's why I thought there were should be two egresses in a development.
I think that.
Oh, I hear the.
I think that.
Oh no, I'm going to find out now.
I think that Josh is here representing the fire department.
Good evening, Mayor Peck, members of council. Josh Sherman, civil engineer with Public Works. Representing Public Works, I'll try not to speak for emergency services, but as the applicant pointed out, so Airport Road's an arterial street.
Right.
We do have standards with regard to number of accesses and spacing of those accesses onto an arterial street. So the proposed access to the north, however it was drawn previously, when it was reviewed, was always intended to be, or at least from Public Works perspective, commented on as an emergency access only. So to answer your question, that is the reason there's a secondary access, is to provide, if for any reason the primary access is not available, there is an emergency access, a secondary access that could be utilized, but the intent is not for it to be a daily use in terms of access onto Airport Road due to intersection spacing and other design criteria.
So if you said it was gated and locked,
It would be locked,
who would have the key?
the fire department.
Okay. Counselor McCoy.
All right, thank you, Mayor Peck. Josh, why did we not look at Lot 7 and on this, which is the upper left-hand corner, and connect to Glen Eyre Drive as that? Because I'm concerned. I'm not liking the idea of a big privacy fence around the whole thing. I don't mind the landscaping and the split rail type of fence, but it kind of sends the wrong message to how we, are an inclusive community with this sort of privacy fence stuff and everything, and then the whole idea of not having it connect there to that. This isn't a gated community to the. I'm just wondering.
Sure. So there, along the northern boundary of the subject parcel, there's an outlot associated with the adjacent development. That outlot serves several purposes. It has an existing utility and drainage easement. The one thing it does not have is an existing access easement. So right now there's a barrier there in a way to get from the public right-of-way that's within the subdivision to the north into this property. That barrier is that outlot, and that outlot doesn't have an access easement across it. Additionally, with regard to density, so again, I don't want to speak for emergency services, but there are some criteria with regard to density. So they're at that threshold of density where they would only need one means of access. The secondary means of access is good, but typically that has to meet one half the diagonal and et cetera. In this case, where it's being proposed is acceptable because of the density within this development.
Because it's like one under the.
Exactly.
Thank
So
you.
it's 24 units is at the limit.
Councillor Christ.
Mr. Bestall, we got some interesting photos at our desk, so I'm just wondering, you say that the 2 existing homes are not viable?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, that's correct. We've looked at them pretty extensively, and we really feel that this is an opportunity, frankly, to build new. And, you know, we held on to them for the thought of reusing them and rehabbing them, but there's a cost issue, but we also see it as an energy opportunity, and there's a lot of other things we can do to have those homes be used more effectively.
Yeah, how old are these homes?
Great question. I want to say,
80s? 1980s?
Yeah, I was going to say 80, but it's around, we're starting to get close to 50 years.
Okay.
And they haven't been very well maintained, to be honest.
There are people living in these homes?
We have leased them out from time to time. I don't think that, I'm not sure, I think that one may have people in them now.
About the privacy fencing, is that going to be a problem with the construction? I notice a lot of these lots are right up against that privacy fence. And if I read correctly, you're supposed to put up the privacy fence before you finish construction or before you start?
That's correct. That was the condition that the Planning Commission penned and was for the again, the concept plan, annexation plan. And the council approved that. It's not preferable for, to put up a fence like that but at the same time, we're not going to be operating on other people's property. So it may be that we do it in steps, but I think that was the condition. And, it was discussed at the Planning Commission, and it was something that they felt was really important. So we're planning to be compliant.
I think what's standard is what's in the photos, which is a split rail fence when it goes to green spaces. I think that's typical.
Yeah, it's not, that's true.
Okay.
The fence will be like the fence to the south. It'll be a solid plank fence. That was what was preferred by the neighbors to the west, actually, to continue that fence. And so that's what we've indicated on our construction drawings.
I think that blocks access to the greenways there for the development. What price point are you thinking for these units?
I can't really
Can't guess.
give you a good answer. No, I would have told you it wouldn't have taken 4 years to get this to this point. So, yeah, I just would be guessing. I think that these, will have a relatively high price point, but I have no idea at this point.
Okay. And with the 2 extra units, is there any way of adding some attainable pricing? And that would mean more in the 400, 450 range. It doesn't really fit in with the 12%. That's mostly for affordable, but we're looking to have more on-site attainable that includes, people that work within the city.
Yeah, I think we're an advocate for that.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned we have 700 units currently in the process that are either affordable or attainable on-site construction.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think that makes sense for this property, and we've looked at it carefully. We do believe that ADUs are an opportunity here, and we don't have a product designed yet that would either build them initially or have the buyers, the owners put those in. But
You think that would be over a garage, or because they don't have large lots? And I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just looking at the.
Well, with the depth of lots that we have, these are running 6,200, maybe 6,500 square feet. So those are actually ample by today's standards for square footage. I think it's fine. And we go up to 17,000 for some of the largest lot. And then we have a lot on the 8,000 to 10,000 square foot size. So, you know, that was our effort, again, to be compatible with the neighborhood and to have this thing fit. And I think it makes sense.
It looks like a nice little project and a good buffer between airport and Somerset. So I'm just a little gobsmacked by having to put a privacy fence around it. And I think that might be inconvenient for you as well. And Mr. Burchett left, but I think that's a variance from our code, actually. Because we've talked a lot about green spaces and buffers and.
I might add that that Josh was mentioning the 80-foot, you know, it's basically a utility, it's a utility corridor, you know, utility corridor. And it's owned by Somerset Meadows. So they maintain it. They've done a great job with it. It's part of the drainage corridor. So it's really not a people space, or, you know, people at our project would not have access to it.
Right, but there are split rail fences there, but you still have the benefit of a little bit of green, you know, looking out your back door. Okay, I think my time is about up, and thank you for answering my questions.
Seeing no one else in the queue, I am going to open this up for public comment, and I see that Carol Affleck has signed up to speak. Yikes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. The greenest building is the one that is already built.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you give us your address, please?
Oh, sure. 1341 North 95th Street. The greenest building is the one that is already built. This is a quote by Carl Elefante, FIAA 2018 President of the Institute of American Architects. This statement highlights and emphasizes the importance of occupying, maintaining, renewing, and adapting existing buildings to contribute significantly to sustainability goals. Existing buildings are a resource for tackling climate change. Keeping and reusing existing buildings avoids the release of massive quantities of greenhouse gases, emissions of which are caused by needlessly demolishing and replacing existing buildings. 8757 North 87th Street, as shown on the preliminary concept plan, must be considered for adaptive reuse. It's the same size and compatible with the houses in Somerset across the fence, Somerset Meadows. Recently, it was renovated by the developer owner with new carpet, new kitchen appliances, new plumbing fixtures, shower, new floor tile, new countertops, and more, as shown in their former real estate listing. When purchased by the developer, the house already included 2 recently installed high-efficiency furnaces, a new hot water heater, a new energy-efficient package in the crawl space, and a recent Grand Manor asphalt shingle re-roof. The house exhibits extensive adaptive reuse of used brick, energy-efficient 2x6 exterior walls, pillowwood windows with storm windows. The concept plan amendment indicates the removal of 8757 and 8791 North 87th Street, the 2 existing residences, and trees. Longmont Zero Waste Resolution, whereas avoiding the creation of waste or discards in the first place is the most economically efficient and environmentally sustainable resource management strategy. So I ask you to support sustainability. Please do not set a precedent with approval of demolition of usable buildings. Please consider retaining the existing homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So Jack Bestel, can I ask you one question really fast?
You have to close.
I know. Okay. Don't go away. Seeing no one else in the audience. Oh, we have another person. Thank you. Come on down.
Mayor, council members, my name is Stephen Laughlin. I live at 3709 Glen Air Drive. My home is directly north and adjacent to the property, and I am the president of the Somerset Meadows Master Filing Number 1 Homeowners Association. And I am here tonight representing my homeowner members, as well as I'm a homeowner next to the property. Therefore, you might expect that I'm here to object. I'm not. You might also remember many, many months ago, I sent you a letter that primarily was an objection. But many of my concerns have been addressed. First, we've accepted that, and I won't use the right terms, but the plan is consistent with the city's ideal developments in terms of density and things. But it is very close to some of my homeowners' properties, especially on the west. I've got a little bit of that green buffer from our HOA green space that we've spent tremendous amounts of money. I can tell you how much, by the way, every year we spend to take care of it, to maintain the water flow. It's a drainage ditch. But that would buffer landscape and fence was because our homeowners were really concerned about that change of density in homes so close to their properties, right up against it. And it was a compromise that obviously was the applicant was willing to accept very early on in the development process. And it began the journey of us cooperating together. Then we had great concerns, by the way, over traffic, which, as you heard, and I'm still very concerned, that the speed down Airport Road, I still have people that are very much looking forward to having a traffic light or a circle because we're really worried about somebody getting hurt. That'll come later. We were concerned about drainage. The applicant worked with us and with city engineers, by the way, so applaud to the city professionals to figure out how to do the drainage so some of our concerns were addressed. Our neighbors, frankly, and I can't speak to some of the issues the prior speaker spoke to, but our neighbors are very thrilled to have those older homes go. They may have been worked on and upgraded. They are eyesores, and frankly, I'm worried about the one closest to me burning down. Every night I go to bed worried that it's pretty old, and I worry about it. So we are overall supportive. We've been collaborating. We're now working on an easement for the sidewalk, which is also on our HOA's property. We're collaborating on the landscaping along that sidewalk. So we've had a very, what I would consider, as much as we originally objected, we are now collaborating with the applicant in hopes of having, great neighbors, adjacent to us. But we also, had our concerns about maintaining our space that we've spent tremendous amount of money on over the years, and and shielding some of our neighbors from that level of housing that close to their properties. So I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share this with you. Good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this ordinance in the public? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing on 2024-66. Yes, I'm calling Jack Bestel back up. Jack, I just have one question for you. In determining to raise these two houses, I'm assuming you had engineers look at the houses. Would you speak to that?
Yes, we've had them evaluated, engineers, architects, and I understand the first speaker's concerns and the attachment to the house. We think at the end of the day, it's just we're going to have a lot better residential products there, both in terms of all electric, energy, and in terms of livability and the style of homes and floor plans that work with today's people. And so you kind of put all that together, and it wasn't, as you see, it wasn't an easy decision for us. We kind of wavered, but we feel very firmly now about how it should work.
Okay. I want to thank you for working cooperatively with the neighbors. That's very important in our city, that we have developments that everybody loves, or at least accepts. So thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to move this 2024-66 bill?
I'll move ordinance 2024-66.
Second.
Text.
It's been moved by Counselor Hidalgo Faring and seconded by Counselor Rodriguez to move 2024-66. This is to pass and adopt a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the concept plan amendment to the Westview Acres Concept Plan, generally located west of Airport Road and south of Pike Road.
Aye.
We're going to have to make a motion to, no, not on the second reading. Yep, let's vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We are now on a bill for an ordinance, 2024-67, conditionally approving the vacation of 2 LPC easements, 2 utility easements, 2 sanitary sewer and water easements, 2 drainage easements located within the boundary of lots 5 and 6 of Irwin Thomas First Filing Final Plat, generally located at 200 Bountiful Avenue, west of Harvest Moon Drive and south of East Ken Pratt Boulevard and Costco. And Kristen, you are a busy girl tonight. Kristen Cody will give us a presentation on this one.
Thank you, Mayor Peck and council members. This will just be a very brief presentation to give you the overview of the proposal. So tonight I will be talking about the Irwin Thomas First Filing Replat C Vacation of Easements. This property is located at 200 Bountiful Avenue, south of Costco, north of Bountiful Avenue, and west of Harvest Moon Drive. You can see it depicted in the red outline on the right side of the screen, and it is currently zoned PUD. The request is to vacate 8 easements on the property within the Irwin Thomas First Filing Replat C preliminary plat. These easements are currently in place for utilities, water, sewer, drainage, and electric services dedicated to Longmont Power and Communications, and they are no longer necessary due to the redevelopment of the property. And I apologize that this does not present itself as clearly as I would like, but this gives you a generalized idea of where those easements are at. The existing 2 lots, this is their boundary line, and we have utility easements being vacated on both sides of that line. There's an easement in this general area to be vacated. This is in the northeast corner of the plat. And then these are 2 additional easements that are being requested to be vacated this evening. The following options are presented for the council's consideration when reviewing the ordinance for the vacation of easements. Approve the ordinance finding the vacations are in compliance with the Longmont Municipal Code and review criteria. Approve the ordinance with additional conditions that would make the vacations in compliance with the Longmont Municipal Code and review criteria, or deny the ordinance finding the vacations do not comply with the Longmont Municipal Code and review criteria. Staff recommends that City Council conditionally approve the vacation ordinance subject to the approval and recordation of the Irwin Thomas First Filing Replat C final plat, and I have prepared an ordinance that reflects that recommendation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Do we have any questions from council? Seeing none, I would like to open up the public hearing on 2024-67. Is there anyone here that would like to address 2024-67? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and ask for a vote.
I move ordinance 2024-67.
Second.
We do need to move it with the recommendation that was made. Okay. All right, so it was moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring, and the motion is to pass and adopt this bill as an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of 2 LPC easements, 2 utility easements, 2 sanitary sewer and water easements, and 2 drainage easements located with the boundary of lots 5 and 6 of Irwin Thomas first filing final plat, generally located at 200 Bountiful Lane, west of Harvest Moon Drive and south of East Kin Pratt Boulevard and Costco. And Kristen, I see that you want to add something to that.
No, I have nothing to add. Thank you,
Okay,
Mayor
thank you. Let's vote.
Aye.
The voice from the... That passes unanimously. Thank you. So we are now at the part of the agenda where we're going to have items removed from the consent agenda, and Councilor Christ pulled item C. So I will turn this over to Councilor Christ.
Thank you, Mayor. And also, thank you for this nice letter that you sent to RTD on September 6th. It's part of this letter that I wanted to discuss. Because you're asking for reinstatement of LD1 and LX1 services from RTD as consideration for supporting the debrucing that they're asking for. And I just want to suggest that we follow Governor Polis's example when it came to House Bill 1001 and endorse this after we've received a commitment from RTD to actually reinstate those services, LD1 and LX1 services. I think it's good to trust, but I think it's better to verify, and also better to have a commitment from RTD before we fully endorse debrucing. One of the things you mentioned in your letter is that they're actually in a really good financial status right now. And I just want to also mention to the council that it wasn't Longmont that wrote the contract for Fast Tracks. This came directly from RTD, so I find it a little objectionable that they find it cumbersome to work with. You know, they can hire an accountant just like anybody else and figure out a formula for paying back Tabor. And if they can't do it the first year, they will certainly have a formula for the second year. So I object to this item, and I would ask that we table our 2024-66 until we have a firm commitment from RTD to reinstate our services. And that's a motion.
Is there a second? Councilor Christ made the motion to table this until we have a commitment to table the commitment or the support of the Tabor debrucing until we have a commitment from RTD to reinstate the LX1 and LD1 bus routes. Do I have a second?
Yeah,
What's going on with the Zoomers?
I don't see anything.
No hands.
No hands, okay. I think that's a great idea, but you don't have a second, so. I do understand where you're coming from. And in a way, it does make sense. However, the support for Tabor, I think, needs to go in before the support or the lack of support before they submit their ballot initiative to the state. So
Either way, I don't think they're going to pay out in '25, but I think it will affect our service coming up. And I think just having to face the cliff, if you will, of having to come up with a formula and actually address Tabor may be impactful enough for them to follow your recommendation and commit to a service.
is there any other discussion on this? Seeing none, Let's vote.
There's 90 seconds.
Well, let's vote to pass the consent agenda. I move that we pass the consent agenda.
Resolution, no, just resolution.
I'm sorry. I move to pass Resolution 2024-66.
And I'll second.
It's been,
That was me.
it's been moved by myself and seconded by Counselor Hidalgo Faring.
Aye.
So this passes 5-2 with Counselor Christ and Counselor Martin in opposition. So we are now at general business, and this, I will ask if we need a break up here or in staff. Does anybody need a break? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the present.
Oh.
Councilor Martin says she needs a break.
Yep, Councilmember Martin needs a break.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we are back and we are now at general business, the 2025 budget presentation and first public hearing. And I see Teresa Malloy.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Teresa Malloy, Assistant Chief Financial Officer. And these are the topics we're going to cover with you this evening. And just a reminder, those first two items on this list, the information for those was included in your packet for last week. We did not, again, include it in the information for this week's packet. We're also going to have Becky talk a little bit about technology with you this evening. And then we're going to present to you our proposed financial policy changes, a little bit about our priority-based budgeting process, and then in keeping with the requirement that we hold a public hearing on or before October 1st, we are going to hold our first public hearing tonight. Typically, we do hold 2 public hearings, and so the second one was also advertised for next week. So I also wanted to call to your attention some information that was included in your packet that came out of some questions from last week. And so what we included for you was the list of new positions that was added in this year, 2024's budget, as well as some additional information and a little bit of a further explanation on the positions that are proposed to be eliminated from the Public Safety Fund. We don't have a presentation on those 2 items, but certainly should you have questions. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Becky Doyle, and she is going to cover our first 3 topics.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Becky Doyle, Chief Strategic Integration Officer for the city. So our first topic is around grants and external funding sources. This is something that we're able to use to supplement city funds to achieve, council's goals. And every year we're looking for those external funding sources to make the most of our local dollars. So importantly, there was some recent legislation at the federal level that brought forward a lot of funding that's relevant to things that we're investing in here at the city. This is a variety of programs that are funded under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And the benefits that we have received from the bipartisan infrastructure law so far include the RAISE grant that is funding a large portion of the work on Highway 119 with the mobility improvements there, where I believe Boulder County is the lead agency in that project. The EECBG program, which is a block grant. Getting some feedback. Where's that coming from? Oh, okay. Great. So that's a block grant funding. So that's formula funding based on population. So we've received $140,000 that's gone toward whole home health projects and improving energy efficiency. And then recently we've been awarded a Safe Streets for All grant of $1.2 million. Associated with our Vision Zero planning and improvements there. So I think you know all of those, but those are some things under the BIL. The other piece of legislation that had a lot of funding available is the Inflation Reduction Act. Most of the funding here is really targeted at consumer rebates to make a lot of climate-friendly changes, investments in things like that at the consumer level. But there are some things that apply to us as a city as well. And so far, we have received $174,000 in alternative fuel credits, primarily to do with our use of compressed natural gas in our trash trucks. And we know that we will receive between 30 and 50% of the construction costs for our upcoming city solar projects. So higher end for those where we're benefiting our underrepresented communities, and 30% just sort of as something that we'll get regardless. So we'll look forward to those with upcoming solar projects. All right, a quick word about the sanitation fund. We are in a position here where the sanitation fund operating budget exceeds the operating revenues significantly for such a small fund. We expect to perform a rate study next year to right size that. We held off this year because there's so much changing around composting in the region. So we will know a lot more about what's going to happen with that regional composting effort next year and be able to make sure that we're pricing things accordingly. There's a minor change that you'll see in financial policy this evening to acknowledge that in long-term financial planning, sometimes we do make use of fund balance. So we may have some years where we have budgets exceed revenues, but in general, we balance it over time. Okay. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about was some investments in efficiency and technology. And I'm going to lean on Harold a little bit here. He's talked a lot about this with you over time. So as you know, we're thinking of the city in different ways and collaborating a lot more closely as we've moved through this budget process and as we update operations over time as well. So those relationships are becoming closer. A lot of the shared technology infrastructure is coming together in ways that are more tightly linked. So one thing to note is that we have a few levers available to us when we think about how we make sure that we are resilient over time to potential revenue impacts such as we've experienced this year. And we always want to look at possibilities for reducing costs, enhancing productivity, avoiding potential future costs, or enhancing revenue. So as we kind of talk through these projects or these things that we're looking at, we can tie some of those back to these methods. And so you can see kind of how we're closing that gap. First of all, we're certainly no strangers to doing more with less, and this is something I think that the council and the community has asked of us over time. A few months ago, when the water and waste staff came to talk about how they were doing this, they shared this graph of how, though population was increasing over time, the staffing in the water and waste department had decreased and then sort of stayed steady over the last 10 or so years. And that staffing is well below the benchmark for similar services. And we know that that's true across services. We don't have a graph for each one of them, but that's certainly a theme that we have. So that's one area. We are, in combination with our sustainability plan, making improvements to use water and energy efficiently in city operations. Here we have a couple of pictures of a turf replacement project that ended up in a beautiful garden in Kensington Park. And then you can see there the recent solar panel install at the wastewater treatment plant. That's part of a project to reduce the energy footprint at our most intensive energy using facility, which is that plant. And we also make our best efforts to use space very efficiently. So we haven't, despite expanding the staffing, we have not built new space for staff in quite some time. Of course, the Safety and Justice Project will add additional space, but they're still occupying that space while it's under construction, as you can see in the photo on the left there. So those are just some of the ways in which we are modeling efficiency in our own operations today. A few things to know are that we're implementing, on a broad scale, Salesforce, which is a technology platform. One of the things that we're looking for here is a 360-degree view of the customer. So how can we understand how customers use services across, all of our different departments, which will help us provide better service more quickly. I had the opportunity last week to attend a conference where they talked about kind of the future of this technology, and that'll come up a little later in here. Don't get too wigged out here, but this is just an example of a technology diagram where we're taking disparate systems you can see on the left and kind of bringing them into that shared infrastructure, so that we can share data, share information about our customers, so that we can, again, provide better service smoothly. Another example of how we are using shared infrastructure is in our existing and upcoming use of cameras through the city. So we've got cameras everywhere. That's a quick snapshot of where some have been. So we see a lot of great effects from that, including, so we were talking about the cost reduction, cost avoidance. So having those are able to speed up the solution, the resolution of incidents that where cameras are involved. We've seen a reduction in calls for service in areas where cameras have been deployed. And then the speed cameras have been used to great effect to avoid the cost of having officers at complaint locations. And I believe you heard a few weeks ago that there's an expected revenue enhancement with the red light cameras.
That's actually on the last one you see when you talk about cost avoidance, productivity improvement, in the four pieces that Becky moved. That's also going to be a cost avoidance too. So when you look at some of the issues that we're having at some of our signalized intersections with the number of people running red lights, this also is an avoidance in that you don't necessarily have to have a police officer there at the same time. And so when you look at the cost parameters of both of those issues, yeah, it generates this amount of money, but more importantly, it lets us deal with the people that are running red lights and not necessarily having to have a full-time staff person or full-time officer there patrolling that intersection and then not getting the calls that are coming into the system. So you're seeing where this will start touching multiple different components in terms of what we're trying to do as we utilize some of these opportunities or engage in some of these opportunities.
Harold, on that note, would you have any problem telling how many how many people abuse the red light at the intersection you told me about the cameras caught?
Yeah, so I think it's 17th and Main. I mean, this is for me when we were talking about some Division 0 and the work we're doing. Part of this is also tying into the camera program. So the cameras that we have at the various intersections, yes, they support public safety. And there have been numerous occasions where it has dramatically reduced the time it takes us to resolve crimes in our community based on the information that we're getting. So that's a piece. We had cameras at 17th and Main, and so in evaluating that intersection, there's software that you can run that evaluates who's running red lights, how many people are running red lights. They did a study for 5 months, I believe, or 3 months. Who's back here? Nobody's back here. Between 3 and 5 months. It's either 3 or 5 months. During that period at 17th and Main alone, they had 15,000 cars that triggered the sensor where they were running red lights. Now, what we have to account for in that is some of those people that triggered running the red lights were actually in the intersection waiting to turn, so that's a slightly different issue.
Oh.
The software also tells us how long the light is red as people were running it. It wasn't uncommon in looking at the data to see a red light that had been red for as much as 3 to 5 seconds where somebody's running that red light. There were about 15,000 of those at that intersection. And so just as we were talking about it, I said, all right, let's take it down to 5,000. And it was 5 months, because now as I'm saying this is 5 months. So let's just take it down to 5,000. That's 5,000 cars that have run the red light at 17th and Main. And so that's 1,000 a month. And then if you remember from the Vision Zero presentation that we provided, and we looked at areas in our community that had the highest incidence of car wrecks. Main Street was one, Hover was one, 119 was one. And so what the data is starting to tell us, and those are the areas, if you remember the maps that we provided, that had the most significant wrecks. So we're talking about fatalities and serious bodily injury. So now when we look at it, now we're seeing data that's now corresponding with the accidents that we're seeing in those areas. And so it's not something that we're just going to use technology for, but what we're going to do is use technology to augment the human resources that we have in dealing with this issue to give us a wider presence. And so when we talk about this, our goal is to reduce fatalities and serious bodily injuries. Technology is going to be an important part of that. So when we look at speed cameras and things like that, that's an important piece, because what we're seeing is in those wrecks, there was one where we had a motorcycle hit a car that was pulling out. The motorcycle was going, I believe, in excess of 40 miles an hour, serious bodily injury, of which speed is the primary issue in this. So when we talk about this, it is utilizing this technology to augment the human resources that we have and allow us to deal with these issues at a different level. Our hope is, and we're going to be evaluating this, is that we see the same results that we're seeing from the cameras, because we can clearly state that where we've put cameras at parks, it has reduced calls for service. Where we've put cameras, it has directly resulted in us dealing with crimes that have been committed in our community in a much faster time frame. And so we're hoping that that technology is giving us the ability to just get better and provide faster, more efficient, effective services to our community. It doesn't eliminate the human aspect. It really is a multiplier to the human aspect that we have in our organization.
Great, thank you for that update.
And that's a theme that will continue here. So the other thing that's really exciting about these cameras and the deployment of cameras kind of broadly are the multiple uses that we can have for these. Obviously not just the public safety use, but how can we monitor stream flows? How can we have the train app that was deployed earlier this year? How can we keep an eye on wildlife and not disturb it? How do we know what parking spots are available? And those are all things where we can use cameras that are already in the community, and make sure that we are using that visual data to the best of our ability to, again, augment our human resources.
And in this case, there are places where under some of our requirements from, Homeland Security and other, we have to have cameras. What we're talking about, and one of the things that we just shifted this year, is we went out for an RFP to look at a new camera system. And we selected Milestone X Protect as the camera system. Why we chose that is because it's not the traditional proprietary camera system that's in place. So we can utilize different softwares that can utilize the feed that's coming into the system. So if we want to do traffic counts instead of going out and putting, the ropes that you put across, we can use the cameras to do that. When we look at certain locations where we may have to have one based on some of our utility infrastructure, if we can put one that's adjacent to the railroad track, that camera feed then goes in and supports the train app so people can see where's the train and what's it blocking. If we have areas in Dickens Park where we have to have a camera, if we put the camera close enough to the river, it'll actually, bringing in another software package, will give us the flows of the river real time, so that from an emergency management perspective, one of the things that we knew that happened during the flood was the gauges got blown out, so the data wasn't reliable. This gives us another source of data. And it really is about shifting the organization where, instead of operating as individual units within the organization and we all have these components, we're all on the same platform. And we're getting multiple uses out of that, which then is a lower cost organizationally, but then you have a higher return on your investment by being able to utilize that technology.
Sounds great.
Okay. Next up, we want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. Now, this is very hot right now, of the buzzword in all the technology. I'm sure you're hearing about it in in personal use and uses that you may have through your profession. So in general, here's just a definition of artificial intelligence with an E that did not stay on the same line there. So basically, things that allow computer systems to perform functions that normally require human intelligence. That's a really broad range of functions, and it can be anything from like a statistical model to, an autonomous vehicle to a lot of other things. So there are generally kind of 4 types of artificial intelligence that they talk about. So reactive would be something like a chatbot, where it's programmed to have a specific response to a specific input. Limited memory, that would be something like autonomous driving, autonomous vehicles or something where it's using sensor data and providing some output. The things on the right here, where we're talking about theory of mind and obviously self-aware. As far as I know, we are not at the point of having self-aware artificial intelligence, and I think they're close to the middle one there, where they may have some that are aware of emotions, or that different perspectives can be held by different folks. Anyway, there's some interesting stuff out there, but mostly we're talking about stuff in the reactive and that limited memory space, where we're really processing information that we would otherwise process anyway. So a lot of things that we need to consider as we embark on our use of artificial intelligence are the privacy considerations with that. A lot of the large language models that you hear about are trained on data that's publicly available, and by using them, you also submit your data for that kind of public consumption. That's not something that we are able to participate in. Obviously, we have certain responsibilities to protect the data that is in our care. So that's a consideration when we choose tools that we may use. There are some sustainability considerations with data centers and the use of water and energy to support these tools. And then also we need to be cautious, certainly, of algorithmic bias, which is, if you don't know about algorithmic bias, that is just to say, obviously computers do not have biases, but as they are programmed and as they are going through large things of data, we may have outcomes that are not what we would hope for from an equity perspective. So some things that are happening around that space include some legislation. There's legislation happening at the federal level about this. Colorado is very interested in being at the forefront of AI use and even of AI use in government applications. So they have been, I believe this was the first state level regulation around the use of AI. And it specifically addresses some of those issues around privacy and around algorithmic bias and limits or has some reporting mechanisms, we'll say, around the use of AI for specific government functions. So we expect to hear more about that coming up. And that's, also something certainly if you're interested in that you can be involved in the legislative process around. So what are we doing now? So first we've issued some AI guidance for staff so that we don't have, so that people are aware that we can't be putting customer data into large language models, for example. And so there are some guidelines that we have around that that are promulgated. And review of potential AI use cases within the city. We are looking at the use of AI tools in some of our existing technology. So for those of you who use, Microsoft tools in other applications, you may already have Copilot available to you. It's not yet available to those of us in governments. Sometimes the government functionality is a little behind because of those privacy concerns and the need to use data centers that are in specific locations. So we do expect that we will have kind of that integrated Copilot functionality within the next few months. And then just to point out, we talked about the Train app and we talked about some of the image processing that we'd be able to do with that broader camera application. And that image processing thing is also a use of artificial intelligence. So just to know that's kind of where we are at the moment. We will see, I think, a lot more about this, and the public will have a lot of questions about it and what we're doing. So ask us.
The short answer on that is we're being very careful in that, limited in what we do and how we approach this, because I think there's still a lot that we don't know about it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about in Salesforce, and I just didn't get to jump in time, is when we look at this, we talked to council a few years ago in the budget process about this concept of enabling caring communities. And what we knew was that we were not connecting the dots, and so there was probably a lot of duplication of services going on. There were situations where we probably had, I personally know of a fair amount of situations where we had 3 to 4 different departments dealing to try to solve the same issue, and they weren't communicating with each other. At the time, there wasn't anything available. We began working on it. We were trying to do that development. We then moved fast forward to Salesforce in terms of what we're utilizing in our utilities and how we're supporting the community. In that, they actually had a module built that does this. And so the money that council allocated, we're beginning the implementation process on that. And so what we're attempting to do, and this is that reactive piece that we're talking about, is if I'm in a social service program and I'm supporting Mayor Peck, and Sandra's in a different program supporting Mayor Peck, and Sandy's in a different program, all it's going to do is alert us that we all need to talk to each other because we're all engaged in the same conversation and we're not talking to each other. And so one of the most significant things that we saw is we weren't actively connecting human intelligence across, and it's almost impossible to do. It's a problem in every city. And so we're beginning that process. What that's also going to allow us to do is, as we're trying to support different groups within our community, one of the challenges we have is when we get into privacy issues and who can talk to whom, what information can we share. And so a product of this is going to be a form where people can allow us to do certain things so that we can serve them to the highest level we can. and make sure that we're supporting them in that situation. At the end of the day, when it's fully built out, and this is not something that's going to happen overnight, and I'll use myself as an example. If I were in Texas and my mom were here, it would have a form where I could fill out and say, here's who the caregivers are, here's who the individuals are that have power of attorney, and it would be in the system. And if there was an emergency call to my mom's house here, individuals would have access to that information so they can actually contact the caregivers. And then if I were going to be on vacation, I could go, I'm on vacation, cousin X is who needs, and it's real time. And so what we're really doing is focusing our support on our community members and again, eliminating duplications that we're seeing in our system, which what all of that does is create additional capacities to support the community at a different level. And so those are things that's embedded in this, and we'll be talking to you more about it. It's not like we're putting this burden on people. We're merely going to say we can do this, because what a lot of people don't realize now under the laws, if you call for a welfare check, police can't go in. Many cases, fire can't go in. There has to be exigent circumstances. And that's all because of litigation that's happened in terms of when we can do it. And what we started learning from managing the housing authority is we had people that were really concerned about their neighbors, but yet it was almost impossible for us to do the welfare checks. This starts giving us the ability to provide services to our community that we once were able to provide that we're no longer able to provide because of different court rulings. And so this is going to be years in the making, but the whole intent of this is to really support every individual in our community to our highest capability, and make sure that we're connecting the dots internally, because we know we're not all the time.
All right, our next topic are financial policies. So staff reviews our policies annually as part of our normal budget process. They will be adopted by you all by resolution on October 22nd, and then they become effective in January. The policies that we're going to present to you tonight are policies that change the intent or are changes to the intent of the policy. I do want to let you know that there are other policies that we will not highlight with you tonight that are just minor wording changes or additions that really don't change the overall intent of the policy. But all of our changes to our proposed policies are included in attachment M. Okay. So that is our complete list of all policy changes. So the first policy, a new policy that we would like to add, and this one really focuses around defining the responsibilities regarding irrigation systems. So I didn't plan to read it to you this evening, but the complete policy as proposed is up here on the monitors, and it was also included in your council packet in the council communication. The next set of policies are updates to current policies. And the first one is an update to the obsolete and surplus items policy to really insert that obsolete and or surplus items can be used for remote work. Since we are now doing more remote work with COVID and the pandemic, some of these items may be used remotely. And then a update to the broadband utility franchise fee policy. And this is something that Jim had mentioned to you in one of our prior presentations. What we are changing here is what the policy used to be a 5% franchise of very select revenue sources in the broadband fund or utility. It is now, we're now proposing to change that to a general 1% of a broader revenue sources in that fund. So this policy now matches the electric utility policy. It's closer aligned with the water and the wastewater policies in terms of what is the franchise fee is calculated on.
The percentage. To be clear, when we say match, we now have a franchise fee in the broadband utility that charges the same an amount on the same things. Yes. The percentage that we charge to the broadband utility is not the same percentage that we charge in the other funds.
And then the utility rate study policy, the implementation statement is just clarifying that the broadband utility reviews competitive pricing quarterly. And the final one is the policy that Becky was speaking to you about earlier, the sanitation fee, where we are proposing that we insert what is in blue. Temporary annual operating losses may be permitted by council directed based on the by council direction based on the levels of fund reserves. So that's the one she mentioned earlier. So that is the policies we wanted to bring to your attention. As I said, there are more changes, and certainly if you have questions on any of those, we'd be able to answer those as well. And then I'm going to turn it over to Sandra, and she is going to talk about our priority-based budgeting.
Are there any questions on the policies before we move forward?
Yeah, but that was what I was going to ask. I don't see anyone's, I don't see anyone. So we're good.
All right, good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Sandra Cifuentes, Budget Manager. In your council packet, we did include some priority-based budgeting information, and also known as PBB, and how it relates to our 2025 budget. We want to take you through a high-level overview of our PBB process, just to give more context to that info. As you know, PBB is a tool that is used by the city to allocate resources and link budget decisions to strategic results and outcomes that City Council and the community have identified as being important for the long term. It is a multi-step process that builds on each former step, so I'm going to walk you through those steps today. Whoops. The first step is to identify the right results. So what do we want to come out of the programs that we as the city offer the community? The following results came from our Envision Longmont Master Plan goals, and include the top 6, which are livable centers, corridors, and neighborhoods, a complete, balanced, and connected transportation system, housing, services, amenities, and opportunities for all, a safe, healthy, and adaptable community, responsible stewardship of our resources, and job growth and economic vitality through innovation and collaboration. The next step was to define and value those results. And what we mean by value is out of the results that came out of Envision Longmont, we wanted to know which had the highest value to the community. And so to find this out, we went out to the community to various locations and asked the community just that, to place a score to these relative to each other, And the percentages that you see on the screen are the result of that community process. Then the third step was to score the city programs. And it is a weighted scoring that takes into account how well the program performs against governance programs, which you see on your screen here. It also takes into account the community programs that I was just mentioning that came from our Envision Longmont Master Plan. And then it also takes into account basic program attributes. Those include things like mandate. Are we mandated to provide the program? And if so, at what level? Is it a state mandate, federal mandate? The reliance on the city to provide the program. What portion of the community is served by the program? If there's a cost recovery of the program, what does that look like? And then social equity. Does the program promote and support equity? This then places the program in one of 4 quartiles, which is the score, and it ranges from quartile 1 to quartile 4, with quartile 1 being the most aligned, or the program with higher scores, and quartile 4 being the least aligned, so it has the lowest scores. At the end of step 3, we end up with a prioritized list of city services and programs, and use that overall score to make budgetary decisions during our budget process. And this is just to ensure that our resources are going towards priorities and programs that fall in the higher quartiles. And this graph here shows you by quartile the proposed level 1 and level 2 ongoing funded requests. This does not include costs associated with salaries or benefits. But what we're trying to show you here is out of the 5.3 million that was funded in level 1 and level 2 ongoing requests, almost 60% of those, or 3.1 million, fell in programs that have the greatest alignment with city priorities. And with that, we'll open up to questions. We did include some additional information in your packet. It has, the breakout by fund, by quartile, and we've also provided a list of programs with their overall score for reference.
Do we have any questions or concerns from council members? I don't see anybody. Let me see. Okay, Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I just want to clarify. So oftentimes we've heard the phrase tier 1 funding. Is quartile 1 similar to tier 1, or does quartile 1 have many more things as far as requests versus tier 1, which is must pay the bills?
So yeah,
level one,
level one, yeah. So no, so they're not the same.
Okay.
Because there are things that we have been doing that may not necessarily be in quartile 1, but do have level 1 funding increases. And when we talk about this, and when we went through the training, this has evolved over time. So one of the things, from council direction was adding the social equity component a few years ago, and we had to step into this. And so no, they're not the same. We're evaluating in those issues. And the other thing that we did 2 retreats ago is, we had the Envision pieces, but we aligned that with the council goals, because if you look, there's a lot of commonality between the council goals and the Envision, and we brought those together in terms of how we're looking at funding.
Thank you.
Councilor McCoy. No,
that's
that's
me. Yeah.
Hidalgo Fairing. It's
Yeah.
getting late.
I know, I hear you. Thank you, Mayor. So I do have a question. I think it was on slide 42 maybe, or 41. I think maybe oh yeah, no, it was 41. And I put myself out of it. So So looking at the different, the scoring mechanism, I remember early when I first got on council, I had a conversation with Jim Golden in looking at the priority-based budgeting. So when we look at things like, I'd say like through an equity lens, we have a senior program. So maybe, what's the rough percentage of seniors in our, do you have it off the top of your head? So let's just say I throw a number out there that it's 30%.
It's increasing, yeah.
It's increasing. So of these programs, so this was something that grabbed my attention, is if we are looking at the community as a whole, and we are looking, only 30% of the population is benefiting from this, so we're going to rank it further down. And, but however, of that 30% that utilize that program or that service, maybe 90% or 95% of that population is tapping into that or benefiting from that program. So, how is that weighted in looking at, really identifying that this is a core need for our populace? And I give the senior, because I think that was early in we were looking at the senior service center and services to that. And, I was curious to know, is that shift, becoming more in the forefront as you budget and determine which programs to continue funding and throwing more support in?
So maybe I'll start.
Yes.
Then I'll jump in.
With just a bit of additional information on the scoring. So each program, whether it's a community program, so community programs are those programs that, of course, we're providing to the community. They're outward facing. Governance programs, on the other hand, are not programs that are directly provided to the community, but they are the programs where, so for instance, budgeting is one of those. So it is not a direct program that the city benefits from, but the rest of the organization really couldn't do their jobs to support the community without that program. So those are the governance programs. All programs, regardless of whether they're community programs or governance programs, are all scored using the same basic program attributes. And every program is scored against every one of those basic program attributes. So there is a variety of components of scoring. Community programs, on the other hand, in addition to the basic program attributes, they are also scored on how their level of influence over each of those results. Governance programs are scored in addition to the basic program attributes. They're scored on their level of influence of these items. So slightly different scoring components when you're talking about governance versus community programs. So as you can see, there's a lot of components to the scoring. So one overall or one piece of the score, such as reliance on the city to provide the program or portion of the community served that you mentioned, is really just a minor component of the overall program. So if a program may score relatively low to portion of community served, that program may score much higher and have an overall higher total score if they can support those items in the top part of this chart, the results. If they have a direct impact on achieving those results, their overall score will be much higher, even though they may have had a low score in portion of community
In
served.
portion of community service. That's what I wanted to verify, but go ahead.
And so here's the nuance to this. So within each department, every program scored. So when we talk about senior services, I'll just continue on that example that you gave us. They have many different programs, and each program is scored in terms of what we're looking at. So if you look at the client-based services that we're providing, they're hitting pretty high on housing services and amenities because we know they're touching clients there. They're touching a safe, healthy, and adaptable community in that issue. So it may be that within those programs, that piece is scored really high.
Yes.
It may be more that the programmatic functions that they're putting on score lower because of the nature of what they're hitting and who they're serving. This is only one piece of what we look at. You know, the other piece, and I'll talk about sort of the evolution of LEAD and CORE. One of the things that we were seeing is if you look at it in terms of mandate to provide the programs, there's no mandate that we do that. If you look at portion of the community served, it's a smaller portion of the community that we're serving. If you look at cost recovery, it's not there. But the other thing we're looking at is what are the costs associated with not providing that program, because what we know is increased calls for services, increased transports to the emergency room. So now we're starting to look at the cost recovery piece of this, because if we're providing this program and it's reducing the calls for service, it's reducing the number of transports to the emergency room, it's having a broader impact in what we're trying to do. And so all of these are coming into play when we're looking at this.
And so it's that indirect impact, so looking not just directly. And so I appreciate you going into more detail about that. There was another slide where it talked about money that went to that most aligned, and then all the way down to least aligned. And there was one slide that you showed us, and I don't know if I have it on here, where there was more money being allocated for less aligned areas. So I guess, looking at why, not just why the money goes there, but also if it's not aligning with our council priorities, do we need to be taking a look, rethinking, are our priorities in line with community, with the needs of the city? What are some of these? So I look at that less aligned where it was 1.1 million, where it's a little higher up. Is there something that we need to be taking a closer look at, that are our priorities? Sorry, it is getting late. Misaligned, or is there something, is money allocated to that? Why is that happening?
So I think there's two things we need to look at. Is one, we'll need to bring back the total budget and not just what the proposed ongoing increases are going to look at, because there's a difference in there too. Because I think when you look at the total budget, it mimics 1, 2, and 3. It just may be that in this budget cycle, where you're seeing the less aligned, again, it doesn't mean that it's not important. It just means that as we're measuring all of these things, that's where it's falling. It could be one of the it could be a program that is in complete alignment with council's goals. That is just lower in the quartile piece. But generally, we'll need to bring back what the total alignment looks like. And then, we can dig into it a little bit more, but what we're seeing in this budget cycle that's a little bit different than what we've seen in previous budget cycles when we look at level 2 expenses, because level 2 expenses is where we really start utilizing this, because we're looking at where does it sit, what do we need to fund, what's there. This is really reflective of level 1 expenses. And this is just reflective of it costs more for us to do the same thing that we've always been doing.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, I thank you for your presentation.
All right, and so as I mentioned, our first public hearing for this evening. So the public hearing can be on any of the topics that are included in the overall budget package. So I'll let you hold your public hearing.
Thank you. So I now open up for public hearing to our residents. Is there anybody in the room that would like to address our public hearing proposed budget programs? You can do it on the proposed budget, any of these four. Am I stating that correctly? You can have a public hearing on any of these items. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing for this budget process. Is there, I missed the, no, I guess council was asked, and, okay.
And there will be one more chance next week, as I
Yes.
mentioned. And then, so tonight really does wrap up all the items and topics that we had on the list to present to you all. We will need your final direction on those same items that you saw on the previous slide, in order for us to then prepare the ordinances and resolutions that we will bring back to you so that we can adopt the budget and the pay plan and the financial policies. The same question we asked last time, if there is something that we have not provided you information on, if you've got additional questions or need any additional information, we'd like to hear about that tonight so that we can bring that back to you next week.
Okay, thank you for asking, because I do have something. I have gone over all of the CIP projects that are in the 2025 budget, as well as some of the expenses. And what I didn't see, and I apologize if it's there and I just didn't recognize it, is the Chimney Hollow CIP projects. That construction is to be finished by the summer of 2025. And we owed a little over $5 million on that. And I didn't see anything in the budget on that, so.
Hello, Mayor. and Council.
Hello, Becky
Doyle.
Doyle.
I can answer that question quickly. So the final portion of our participation in the construction of Chimney Hollow is a $5.4 million contribution that will be paid over a 20-year period. So it actually appears as part of our operating budget in our assessment that we pay to the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so what you don't see it in the CIP is it's not a capital improvement project that we're undertaking, and that's the connection then into the operating expenses.
So where would that CIP be? Who takes
Northern Water.
Northern Water would take that, okay. Well, that was easy. Thank you. So, seeing no one else in the queue, and this is the end of this budget presentation. Thank you, and Carol, go ahead.
Just as always, any questions that come up, just let us know, or additional information, just reach out to us. I know some of you all have been asking questions, and that's great. Just let us know, and we'll make sure we have that to you next time.
So if we wanted to email, who would be the person? Becky, would it be you, or would it be?
It would be Teresa, Jim, Sandra.
Everybody.
You know, I would say start there, Sarah.
Okay. All right.
You can include me on that. I will tell you when the questions come in, they do forward them to me.
Okay.
So I would say just the folks that you've been seeing, and then if it involves a specific area within the organization, then we push that out to them.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now have the second thing on general business is a request to initiate a land development code text amendment to revise the definition of recycling facility and allow less intensive recycling uses in additional zone districts. And Phil Taylor, hello, Phil, will be the presenter.
Perfect. Good evening, Mayor Peck, members of council, Phil Taylor, senior planner with Planning and Development Services. And I am here this evening because the city of Longmont has received a request from a private recycling company to amend the land development code to revise the definition of recycling facilities and allow less intensive recycling uses in the primary employment NPE zone district, with the possibility of adding less intensive recycling uses in other districts throughout town. The request under review proposes to differentiate smaller scale recycling, such as collection, processing for shipment, and temporary indoor storage from more industrial type uses, such as mechanical sorting, chemical processing, and disposal. You can now see the current definition of recycling facilities on the screen. The current definition is broad and does not really make distinctions between the size of the operation, materials being recycled, or the processes used. And when I say broad, I believe that is by design. Prior to the adoption of the Envision Longmont Comprehensive Plan, the Land Development Code had approximately 3 different uses involving recycling things. Those uses included recycling collection points, recycling centers, and recycling plants, all with varying degrees of intensity and requirements. Those were all combined into the current definition we have today. Due to the general definition, recycling facilities are only allowed in 2 zone districts throughout town, public facilities and mixed-use employment. The request received requests staff to consider recycling uses in the NPE zone district, but staff, if this moves forward, may consider less intensive recycling uses in other zone districts. If this proposed amendment moves forward, staff may recommend creating 2 categories for recycling facilities. The differences between the 2 have not been finalized yet, but we've considered things as size and scale, types of materials being processed, regulatory requirements, and processing methods. So based on this brief presentation and the information in the packet, council has 2 options for this item. You can either direct staff to move forward with reviewing this citizen-initiated amendment, or you can tell staff not to process the amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I do. Can you go back to the other slide, right there? First of all, what's in PE?
Non-residential primary employment.
Okay.
And that zone district specifically was the one the citizen requested recycling uses be added to.
So on the residential districts, you're saying drop off only. What is that, a light recycling?
We haven't really created the categories yet. When I put residential districts, I was envisioning something like a recycle drop-off container or something like that, sort of in a parking lot. Not any processing of the recycling materials.
Okay, because I'm picturing sidewalks.
Sure.
Where somebody's dropped off a refrigerator.
No, that is not how it would go.
Well, it makes me a little nervous.
Sure, understandable.
And my other question is, when we're talking about the major facility, does this apply to even if it is county land but is in the city limits? Does it apply to everything that's in the city limits, even if it isn't annexed? Thank you.
I would say no. I don't know for sure. I don't know if we would process an application for that.
Different question in that I think what you're talking about is the conversations that we've had in property that we own outside of our developed area that already have an industrial use.
Yes.
And if we can put a composting facility at that location, we would have to probably go through something similar to this just to make sure that our zoning code matches. This is not the same thing that we're talking about there.
Okay.
There's a different process we're going to have to go through to look at that. And that is one of the things that we're working through right now.
Actually, you do know the one I'm talking about that I have been frustrated with within the city.
Oh,
But it is county land.
So yeah, so I was thinking about
Yeah.
the city composting facility. No, now that's different because that's probably, I don't know that fits into these definitions, either one of these. So the challenge with that is that if you annex that, then you have to annex it to have zoning control over it, but then you have the issues with the legal non-conforming use as you're moving through that piece. But our own internal zoning does not apply to property that is unincorporated Boulder County.
Okay. Oh, rats. Okay. Are there any other questions from counselors? Seeing none, can you go back to the screen, what you would like us to do? There you go. Counselor McCoy?
I move that we direct staff to proceed, process an amendment to the Land Development Code to revise the definition of recycling facilities, and propose less impactful recycling uses in additional zoning districts.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, it's been moved by Counselor McCoy, seconded by Counselor Rodriguez, that we direct staff per option number 1. And I do have some concerns that these areas have not been defined, nor has the recycling, what can be recycled in these areas, that we are allowing something to happen when we don't know what that's going to look like, actually. Mm-hmm.
While it wasn't necessarily enumerated in the presentation in the council comm, it was very specific that by recommending or by initiating the process to go forward, that those kinds of concerns will be addressed, and we don't have to necessarily adopt those things when they come forward after they've been clearly defined. And so this allows us to actually see those definitions and let us decide whether we would like to actually go forward.
I understand that. I just made that statement for the public, basically. But thank you. Just a little hesitation. So let's vote.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Mayor, if I can clarify to your question, this is similar to the Tourism Improvement District. We didn't want to do any work until council said, yes, we're interested. This is going to be one of those that's probably going to have a 0 reading, probably a study session, a 0 reading, and multiple times where we're going to bring this before you.
And I appreciate you saying that, because I know that those are the questions we're going to get from the public beforehand. And
It's always good to have that enumerated before the fact, so thank you. All right, we are now at the final call, public invited to be heard. Is there anybody? Steve Altschuler.
Should I say my name again, or you know who I am now?
I think we know who you
Okay.
are, Steve.
So first thing is, I'm hoping Matthew Bennett is still here. For several times I've been up here and advocated for City Council to vote to be a non-sanctuary city. And during the break, Mayor Peck educated me and told me that since Longmont is a home rule city, we are not automatically included in Polis's edict that Colorado be a sanctuary city. So hopefully there's people still watching on TV and I can say this, and maybe Matthew will put it in the paper and let a lot of people know that we are not actually a sanctuary city, and I'm glad to be corrected.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. So I might be a little late because last week I was out of town and couldn't get back here, but I did read that part of the budget was going to be not replacing 2 police officers and 2 firemen. I think that's a really bad mistake. It sets quite a precedent. Those are services that are really, really vital to our community. And what happens if 5 more people retire next year and 6 more the year after that? Are you going to keep saying, well, let's just not replace them. Let's just not replace them. So I think that needs to be treated very carefully and hopefully keep our police and fire up at the levels they are and should be. The last thing I wanted to talk about, you had asked earlier for public to be heard, and I wasn't sure if I should speak up. It had to do with the Habitat gentleman that was here. And he was talking about 25 units, and then Mr. Rodriguez raised it to, okayed what he said, to raising it to 50 units without a pocket park. So my questions were, A, is that only for Habitat of Humanity?
No.
Or it's for any construction that's going to go on?
Correct.
I think 50 is a really high number. I mean, 20, 25, 30 with no parks for 30 different families, I think is a mistake. I think even smaller groups of people deserve to have a little park to play at. And if it was Habitat for Humanity, which you said no, my question was going to be, what is the average construction size, either in general or for humanity, Habitat for Humanity? So if 90% of their units are all 30 units, that doesn't seem right either. If most of them are 80 and they'd all have a park anyway, then it's not as important. So no one covered that, and I just thought those were some important questions to ask, and I am done. Thank you very much.
I am going to address these 2 things. First of all, you've only heard part of that pocket park. It has to do with how close is this development to a city park.
Okay.
So, yeah, or access to parks, but within walking distance.
Like a quarter mile or?
A quarter mile is
Okay.
exactly
okay.
what we said. So, and we had stated earlier, it was a correction in the code that it was always 50 units, but we had said 25, so we just corrected the code. The language, the motion was for 50, but the code was misinterpreted. Am I saying that correctly? It was an error, and so we corrected it to be 50. But it was just an error because the motion, when it was done years ago, was for 50.
Okay. So my only other comment on that was, if something is changed with council talking about it, I think it'd be nice to ask one more time if public wanted to be heard.
Well, we'll decide that. I don't know.
On other
So
things
the other
that happen
thing I
later.
want to talk about the police. The 2 positions were placeholders in our budget for years. We did not actually let 2 policemen go. It isn't that we I'm saying this incorrectly. Harold, would you,
I thought it
because,
said 2 police were retiring and not being replaced.
no, no.
what I thought I read.
That's
Okay.
not correct.
No, so this was in the Public Safety Fund, which
Right.
is a special revenue fund that we have in place. We had 2 vacant police positions, and then there on the retiring is that there were 2 firefighters retiring, and so those are the 2 positions. In addition, because of the shortfall in revenue in the Public Safety Fund, technically there were more cuts that needed to occur in the Public Safety Fund, but we moved 3 police positions into the general fund to absorb those. That is specifically based on the revenue that comes into the Public Safety Fund. And so in the event that sales tax revenue increases, we can have those conversations about putting those positions back in the budget, but that's in the Public Safety Fund. And so it's a different fund than versus the general fund.
So because it is the budget, it's more about financing and where are we going to get the dollars? From what fund? How are we moving the dollars in the budget? Not necessarily about, are we going to let people go?
And I knew you weren't letting anyone go. I was just reading about not replacing the firemen retiring.
And the difference in this, because it is the Public Safety Fund, unlike the general fund, when you have positions and you're weighing them against other things, the decision on the positions within the Public Safety Fund is limited to public safety, and it has to be for increased levels of service. So operationally, if we were to have a budget challenge in the general fund, I could not move police positions from the general fund to the Public Safety Fund. In this case, because of what happened, we could move some positions to the general fund, so we didn't have to cut as deep within the Public Safety Fund based on the shortfall that we had in the funding stream from the sales tax.
We're not defunding police. We're figuring out how to fund them.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those. Mayor and council comments? Nope. Seeing none, we're going to move on. You don't see anybody? Okay. So now we're at city manager remarks.
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City attorney?
No comments, Mayor?
Okay. Okay, I'll second that. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Good night, Marcia and Shakita.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Shakita.